Pokemon Scarlet and Violet's Regulation G has officially been announced that will run from May 1st, 2024 to August 31st, 2024, meaning this is the world's format that we are going to be playing this year, and it is a single restricted format, meaning that every team can have one single restricted Pokemon, a box legend if you will, on their team. So today what we're going to do is we're going to rank every one of these restricted Pokemon that are allowed in Regulation G on a tier list here. It goes from S to D. I don't really believe in like F tier as far as Pokemon goes. I don't think there's anything that quite qualifies in that unless it's like a baby Pokemon, but I think that there are a lot of really good options, and I played a lot on Showdown yesterday testing these out, so I'm keen to hop in and start talking about the different restricted Pokemon that you can use, because there are some really solid ones, and I think there are some surprising changes based on nerfs and stuff that happen in Scarlet and Violet that shift up where some Pokemon will lie on this list. So we're just going to go through an order here. Mewtwo, automatically, it's C. I wish Mewtwo was better. I really do. I wish Mewtwo was better. We're over here on Showdown, and basically what this Pokemon's going to do, like, it's got decent speed stat, decent special attack. I could see this basically being like a ladder for funsies kind of Pokemon, expanding force user. Maybe you rock like a Choice Scarf or something on this thing, and you're going to be able to outspeed some stuff. Run it next to Indeedee is going to be your most common scenario. Run it next to Indeedee with Psychic Surge, and just basically helping hand, expanding force, and knock some stuff out and have some fun with it. It's just not a great Pokemon anymore. There's just better options as far as restricted Pokemon go, especially if you're going for an expanding force user. Calyrex-shadow Rider exists, and this is just not Mewtwo's thing anymore. So unless they go for like some sort of buff on Mewtwo, I don't think we're ever going to really see this thing shine. But I am keen to mess around with Mewtwo just for some fun video stuff. Coming back over, Lugia. As much as I love Lugia, I think Lugia was a lot better in the Dynamax format, specifically because Lugia had access to multi-scale. I think that Lugia was better in Dynamax format because you could Dynamax it, multi-scale would then take the hit for you, and you could run like weakness policy and self-proc. It was really fun in Dynamax. I just don't think it's going to be as good in Scarlet and Violet. There could be some cheeky stuff that you could do with this Pokemon. Calm Mind shenanigans, especially with the multi-scale, being able to get a Calm Mind up before you really start taking damage is pretty significant. But yeah, I just don't see this Pokemon being as solid as it was in the Dynamax formats. I still think it'll be fun. It's got some decent bulk. Definitely has some options, but I just don't see it really being that Pokemon that stands out in the format. We're gonna get to some that are gonna stand out. I see Ho-Oh being pretty much the same. Ho-Oh I see being pretty decent as far as a laddering Pokemon goes, mainly because of Regenerator, being able to get out there and do some pretty decent damage, and then cycle out and get your health back. Really solid for Ho-Oh. Just good solid fire damage. I see this being on a lot of Sun teams is going to be the main way you're going to want to play Ho-Oh, but I just don't think, especially with like Ragey Bolt being as popular as it is, I just don't see Ho-Oh being super solid. It's going to be a Terra Sync of a Pokemon, definitely, especially with, you know, other things like Miraidon is picking up, and that's going to be a very big problem for this. So it's going to be really difficult to run Ho-Oh effectively at a high level. Now we're getting into some of the better Pokemon. Kyogre, definitely, I think is an A tier. I almost want to put it in B tier. I don't think it's quite as good as it once was, mainly because of the other Pokemon that are available to us. But Kyogre is still a really solid Pokemon. Access to Drizzle, you can immediately get out on the field and lay down the rain, which is super solid. Water Spout is super solid. The issue becomes for this Pokemon is that priority is everywhere. There's other Pokemon that can just deal with this Pokemon now. Unless you're running like a Choice Scarf or like Tailwind or stuff, you just have Pokemon that outspeed you and immediately shut down this Water Spout. Very difficult. I played a lot with Kyogre, and it just doesn't feel good like it did in Sword and Shield. You're obviously going to run this with like Tornadus. This is going to be really solid because Tornadus doesn't have to go for Tailwind turn 1. You can actually just lay down Bleak Wind immediately and start doing some damage, which is really solid for Kyogre. The Bleak Wind buff is definitely something that helps the Torn Kyogre combo a lot in Scarlet and Violet. Pair this also with Lando Eye, and you're in a really good shape because you can actually just go for Sandsear Storms as well, and this helps with your Raging Bolt matchup, which is going to be incredibly difficult. So I definitely think that there are some bonuses to the Kyogre matchup. I don't think Kyogre's bad. I just don't think it's as solid as it was previously, just because of things like Miraidon, Raging Bolt. These things are popping up and they're very good, and it's just gonna really hinder the Kyogre matchup, especially because we do have a lot of priority now that just shuts down that Water Spout, and it makes things very difficult for Kyogre. And obviously we have things that could deal with the priority. So like Serena is a pretty solid partner with Kyogre. You're able to run Serena with Queenly Majesty. This is going to be able to stop the priority attacks. You can also run for Rigoraph with the Armor Tail ability. This is going to be able to stop priority attacks. It doesn't feel good. It's hard to explain if you haven't messed around with it, but it doesn't feel as solid as it once did. It feels like there's a lot of maneuvering that you have to do in order to make Kyogre really feel solid. So it's just a touch tricky. I still think it's good. Don't get it twisted. I still think it's good. It's just very, very difficult to start getting it rolling, in my opinion. Groudon. I'm half tempted to put Groudon in the S tier. I think Groudon's pretty solid. It just feels really, really good, especially with Gouging Fire specifically. Gouging Fire and Groudon is going to be a fantastic combination. Because Groudon, obviously, the alternative of Kyogre, you're going to set Sun instead of Rain, and then you're going to be able to put out a ton of damage while also being able to boost all of those past Paradox Pokemon. So Gouging Fire with this thing, you can run like Clear Amulet now on Gouging Fire, completely ignore Incineroar altogether, and just start setting Howl and boosting your Groudon up. Very, very solid combination. And then other Pokemon, obviously, that are pairing very nicely with this is going to be like Fluttermane. Regibolt is really solid with this because all of these are getting that benefit from being in the sun. It's just a really good Pokemon right now, and there's great options to run with it, which is giving it such an advantage over something like Kyogre. So I really think that the Groudon play is really good. I think Groudon's extremely solid, and even if you don't want to run all of like the special attacking side of things, you could still run really solid Pokemon like King Gambit next to this, because obviously you're running the Gouging Fire. You can run the Howl King Gambit stuff that's been going on. Chien-Pao plays very nicely here as well. Amoonguss is very nice into this as well, just like the normal Gouging Fire stuff that we've seen running around. So that's a really solid option for Groudon, and I think it puts it in a better place than Kyogre. Personally, I think I would definitely say Groudon is pushing that S tier. It could slip into A tier as we learn more about this particular meta, but I definitely think currently Groudon is really solid. Rayquaza, I think Rayquaza is like a B. Personally, I think it's okay. I don't think it's bad. I don't think it's amazing. It's like right in that nice middle ground. Obviously, Airlock is going to prevent the weather conditions in battle, which is fine. It's nice if you're playing into Kyogre, Groudon, Miraidon, whatever the case may be, right? But it just doesn't feel like this does a ton. You can do, you know, extreme speed stuff with this, which is kind of interesting. However, I just don't know that it's worth wasting your restricted Pokemon on, you know, the Choice Band extreme speed with Chien-Pao stuff that you can do. Instead of just running something like Dragonite. I feel like that's a waste of your restricted slot. Personally, I have seen this on ladder. I have seen this on the Showdown ladder. People are running this. It just doesn't feel like it's super worth it. I think this Pokemon has some play. There's a lot of options here because of that, you know, split in its attack and special attack. You can take it either direction and do a lot of damage with it. I just don't like this. This feels weird. It feels very weird when you could just have Dragonite and then have another restricted Pokemon doing big damage as well. So it just kind of feels awkward that you're wasting your one restricted slot for Rayquaza. But yeah, that's just kind of where I sit on this Pokemon. It's not bad. It's not great. It's right in that middle ground. Dialga. Dialga's decent. I think it's a B tier. It's just kind of an improvement over Dialga. So let's bring both of them up. Right here, really the only significant difference is the defense and attack changes for this particular Pokemon. You're getting more special defense on Dialga than you are on normal Dialga, which is pretty solid in my opinion. I think this just makes it a better Pokemon because you're mainly going for special attacks because of that 150 special attack. So moving that out of the attack and putting it into the special defense just makes this an all-around better Pokemon. So I do think that Dialga is decent. It's a good solid B tier. Basically does the same things that Dialga did, but just, you know, has more bulk to it. So I can say the same thing for Dialga. Dialga's solid. It's fine. I just, you know, I think you have to run, if I'm not mistaken, you have to have the Adamant Crystal for Dialga, but this does boost your Steel and Dragon type attacks. So you could change the item if you want to run Dialga. You're just going to lose a little bit of that special defensive bulk. But other than that, I think they're very similar. They play very similarly. I think this might just be a skosh better, just a hair better. So I'm going to put Dialga right next to it there. Does similar stuff. Both have access to Trick Room. They're like that middle of the road speed tier, especially in these restricted formats where the speed tiers get really, really high. They have that play as a potential Trick Room setter, which is pretty solid. You're able to go in and like, oh, maybe I'm up against a Shadow Rider, right? And that thing's super fast. You can Trick Room up. You can get a, you know, strong attack off. It's that option. Not the best Trick Room Pokemon, obviously because of that 90 base speed, but still a fairly solid Pokemon in that aspect. It's kind of like that nice balanced Trick Room option, kind of like the Blood Moon Ursaluna with the balanced team that was running around in Regulation F was doing. So similar things for Dialga, very, very similar. You know, you're Trick Rooming, running like Flash Cannon, Roar of Time, and Earth Power on this thing, right? This is your bread and butter for Dialga. Maybe some things will change with Terra, but yeah, I think these are solid B tier Pokemon. Going on to Palkia, I truthfully don't know about these two. I don't think they're that great. I don't think they're as good as Dialga. Mainly because, like, if you want to run Water Dragon, I feel like it's just better to run a Sun team with Walking Wake right now. Let's pull them both up here in the showdown. Palkia, that's Palafin. Palkia. Looking at it, it's really just the speed change. Took that from the attack and put it into the speed for Palkia. But other than that, they do similar things to what Dialga does. They do very similar things. Let's get Palkia in here as well. They have access to that Trick Room option. You're not really going to want to be playing the Trick Room option. These are faster than Dialga. Yeah, I mean, it's a solid defensive typing, but I feel like it's just better to run like Walking Wake, or, you know, not use this as your restricted Pokemon. You could run Groudon, run Walking Wake, and it's just better than running Palkia. So that's why I put it as like a C. I just don't think it's that amazing. Even with the increase in speed, you're locked into the Lustrous Orb, and you're only doing increased water and dragon type damage. And if you're playing into the Groudon, it doesn't matter if your water damage is doing that much more, because, you know, the drought is kind of negating that. So it's okay. I think there's some use cases for it. I don't think it's amazing by any means. I think there's more play in Dialga for this particular Pokemon. Giratina and Giratino, again, I just think these are like gonna be C, and I don't think it's because they're bad by like any means. Giratina, I'm not even gonna bring up the other one. I don't think it's because they're like terrible by any means. They're pretty decent typing. The problem is that, you know, we still have Fluttermane. Fluttermane is still going to be good despite Shadow Rider being a thing, but Shadow Rider exists as well, and that is just going to cause a lot of problems for Giratina. So I just don't think that Giratina is going to be that solid. It never really has been. At least in the last couple generations, it's not that great of a restricted Pokemon, and I don't think that's really going to change, especially with the new additions that they've added. This thing just kind of gets outsped. Even if I bring up Giratino, you know, it's not doing that much for Giratina here, right? So I personally don't think that this Pokemon's going to see a ton of play. I think it's definitely a C tier restricted Pokemon. I think all of these have play. That's the thing with the C tier, and nothing's going into D so far. Everything has play. There's a niche that all of these can fill, and they're going to have some success on ladder. As far as like tournament settings go, I just don't see a lot of these really stacking up. As far as Reshiram and Zekrom go, I just don't know. I really don't know about these. I don't think they're going to be that great. I think that the Kyurem White will probably be better. Kyurem White and Kyurem Black. But I'm not seeing these, right? I'm not seeing these Pokemon be used. Everybody's opting out of these. I think they are just a C. They are that niche pick that's going to show up on ladder once in a while, but not really thrive. Moving on to Kyurem specifically. Let's get all of them up here. I think that these do see play, right? I think that these do see some use. Maybe not base Kyurem. It's not even on this list, so I would put that in C. But these two, I'm going to put them up here a little bit higher. They have good coverage options because of access to the original signature moves, right? Fusion Bolt here, and then Fusion Flare here. They have that option, but the Ice buff specifically, I think, helps these, and they can fill a similar role to what Articuno was filling on that team in Regulation F. So I think that these two do see some actual play. Maybe not a ton of play. They may be that middle of the road, not great, not bad kind of thing, much like Dialga. But I have seen these on ladder, like, consistently. They are on those ice teams. They are filling that role, and I think that they will see some play for sure. Maybe not be top tier, but they will see some play and will be pretty solid. Zacian and Zamazenta. I think Zacian is a solid A tier Pokemon. Now, I don't think Zacian is as good as it once was, mainly because it did get buffed. Oh, nerfed, excuse me. On switching, this Pokemon's attack is raised by 1 stage, much like it was in Sword and Shield. However, this only happens once a battle. It can't, if you rotate Zacian out, you cannot reset that up. So that kind of hinders what made Zacian so good. It was so good at rotation and being able to like avoid Incineroar by doing this, and that's not an option anymore. So I think the big thing with Zacian that's going to change is you're going to see a lot more Sword Stance. This thing has pretty solid defensive stats, and you're able to build it maybe a touch more tanky this generation and go for more Sword Stance stuff. Run like Behemoth Blade, and you can run Sacred Sword and be able to kind of get around the Incineroar play and be able to still have that higher attack stat and be able to take a hit. You're still super fast, so you're able to take those hits and then go into an attacking mode after, you know, Incineroar switches in and intimidates you 1,000 times, right? But I think because of the fact that this does only work once a battle now, Zacian is no longer an S tier Pokemon. I don't think this is going to show up nearly as much as it did in previous generation. I just don't think it's as good. I mean, this had like a 67% usage rate in Sword and Shield, something like that, with only being topped by Incineroar, and now I don't think that this Pokemon's gonna be like super awesome. If you didn't have to run Rusted Sword to get the crowned version, and you could run Clear Amulet, it would be 1,000 times better, but it's just not the case for this, and I think it's a necessary nerf for this Pokemon. It was ridiculous in Sword and Shield, so I think this makes sense. I definitely think you're gonna see something more like this, and I think you're gonna see it running next to like Gouging Fire and doing like Howl stuff. I think that could be pretty solid for a Zacian combo. It also negates the Incineroar factor. You could just run Booster Energy and keep going for Howls to keep Zacian in play longer. I think that's a pretty solid combination for these particular, at least for the particular nerf that Zacian received. That's just my thoughts on that. As far as Zamazenta goes, I don't think Zamazenta's bad. I don't think it's as good as it could be currently, because you are locked into the fact that you know, you are like a defensive kind of support Pokemon. Like, you have access to Wide Guard and like a lot of useful tools, but in a single restricted format where you have to only use one of these restricted Pokemon, being a more supporty Pokemon doesn't feel that great as your one restricted Pokemon when you could use something a little more powerful. But I definitely see this being used and doing like the standard Iron Defense body press stuff that you'll see running around. It does get access to coaching as well, so I can see that being a thing. I think this will be better in the double restricted format. I don't think in single restricted this is going to be as good. So as of right now, I'm going to throw this in the B tier, because it's not bad. I do think as like an Iron Defense body press, you can get some wins with this thing. I just don't think it's going to be as good as it will be in the double restricted stuff. Now, for Koraidon, I'm going to put Koraidon in the A tier. I think Koraidon is a solid Pokemon. I think it's very good. I don't think it's near as good as Miraidon. I don't think it's anywhere near as good. The reason for that being is that Groudon exists. So Koraidon comes in, sets the sun, and during sunny day, attack is elevated by 1.3, right? I think this is a really solid Pokemon. You can run Clear Amulet on it. You can avoid the Incineroar swap in. Typically, you're going to be running Fire on this thing because you're going to run like Collision Course. You're going to run like probably some Dragon move or Bulk Up. And then you're gonna, like Dragon Claw, or you're gonna have Bulk Up, and then you're gonna have like Drain Punch or Flare Blitz or something to that effect. Not Drain Punch, excuse me, you already got Collision Course. Flare Blitz, something like that, that's just gonna do that good fire damage. The issue that you have with Koraidon is it becomes a Terra Sync. It does become a Terra Sync because any fairy type on the field looks at this and says, yum. So you have to terrestrialize this if you are in the face of a Fluttermane or something, because Fluttermane will outspeed you. You're able to deal with that, especially if you're setting this on for Fluttermane and its booster speed, which most are likely going to be doing in the new format. You're going to be outsped by Fluttermane. You're going to be forced to terrestrialize. So it does become a Terra Sync and difficult for this particular Pokemon, versus Groudon can, you know, run next to the Gouging Fire, and so could Koraidon. Koraidon can run next to Gouging Fire. However, if you terrestrialize, you now share a typing with the Pokemon you're trying to buff. You already did share the typing with Dragon, so it's just kind of an interesting spot that Koraidon is in. Maybe Koraidon sees more play with things like Venusaur. Not entirely sure for this particular Pokemon. I've seen it a little bit, but I just see so much more Groudon. So like I said, I don't think Koraidon's bad. I think it's quite good. It just has a Pokemon that does similar things, and I think does those things quite a bit better. As far as Miraidon goes, I think Miraidon's going to be very good. I think Miraidon's going to be extremely good. I think Miraidon is an S tier Pokemon. This thing with Electro Drift is stupid. It just does so much damage. So it deals 1.33 times damage with super effective hits. Plus, you got the Hydron engine that increases your special attack by 1.33 when the electric terrain is on the field. Incredibly powerful. Give this thing a magnet, give this thing a life orb, give this thing choice specs, and you are just deleting Pokemon. Absolutely crazy. Very, very strong. Super fast, right? Same as Fluttermane, same as Koraidon, same as Chien-Pao. Super fast Pokemon. Really high special attack and great defensive stats on top of that. And it is finally enabling all of those Paradox Pokemon from the future that really didn't have any option of play before, because all we had was Pincursion. But now, you know, you can run Iron Bundle without the need for a booster energy. You can run Focus Sash Iron Bundle and still get that boost. So you can be dropping Icy Winds left, right, and center, allowing Pokemon to outspeed without the need for a booster energy. You can run Iron Hands, and this is the best thing for Iron Hands specifically, because Iron Hands never used its ability to begin with. Nobody was running booster energy Iron Hands unless it was on a very niche instance. Most of the time you were seeing, you know, the Assault Vest stuff on Iron Hands when it was big in play. Now you can run a Clear Amulet on Iron Hands and still get the boost on your attack stat, and then invest more in your special attack because of the fact that you get Quark Drive boosted by Miraidon. So I think that's really, really solid for this particular Pokemon, and just in general from Miraidon, you can enable a lot of Pokemon. And I do think that other Pokemon that maybe weren't as popular previously, like Iron Valiant here, I think, like, I don't think Iron Valiant's going to become like significantly better than it was previously, but Iron Valiant is going to be pretty solid for playing with Miraidon. There's going to be a lot of stuff that just starts popping up that works very well with Miraidon. So I think that's pretty cool for Miraidon. It gives it a lot of play, gives it a lot of different options that people aren't necessarily prepared for, and it just does stupid damage on its own. I think it's going to be very, very good. Terapagos, I think, is a B tier Pokemon. I've played against it a fair bit on the Showdown ladder, and it's not bad, but like its whole gimmick is just right? So Terapagos, right, it gets the Terra Shell, and it gets the effectiveness only while it's at, it basically gets multi-scale at full health, right? You hit this with a spread move, which are very common in restricted formats, and you just, like, you get rid of this effect altogether, right? And then this Pokemon kind of becomes null and void. Obviously, you're going to Terra Stellar with this thing, you're going to go for Terra Starstorm. I don't think it's bad. I just think it just isn't as good as it could be. I think it'll be better in a restricted format, well, double restricted format, excuse me. But I think right now, especially with Terraform Zero, like, Terapagos Terastallizing ends weather and terrain on the field. That's awesome, but it's only one time. It's not as long as Terapagos is on the field. So it's when it Terastallizes, it just removes it, and then as soon as you bring something back in, it reverses that effect. So it doesn't feel amazing for this Pokemon when you could simply just run your own weather and reverse it that way. Yeah, I just feel like this Terastallization effect feels pretty mid in practice, especially at like Kyogre and Tornadus teams. You're normally running a manual Rain on your Tornadus, so even if it Terastallizes that turn, you drop Rain Dance again and you immediately have it back, and Terapagos is useless, right? At least the ability is. So it feels kind of bad. I think what you're going to see a lot of on this Pokemon is going to be that Terra Starstorm. You're going to see Terra Starstorm with like Calm Mind. I could definitely see Meteor Beam being an option for this. You could completely skip a turn of Calm Mind, go for a Meteor Beam with a Power Herb, and just like get that special attack boost, Terastallize, and then just go in. I think this is a very, very common set that you're going to see, but also I could see this just being like more of a lefties. Leftovers could be really good. I definitely think that some people are going to hit that substitute option for this Pokemon. You get the substitute while you're still in baby Terapagos form, and you get the Terra Shell bonus. You can resist the hits with that, and then be able to get potentially a Calm Mind up as well before they break your sub, and then go for the Terastallization to do big damage. Definitely a solid option for Terapagos. I don't think this is anything that great. It's kind of got a mid-speed tier. It doesn't work great on Trick Room. It doesn't work great in Tailwind. Like, it's just that weird, awkward middle place that I just don't, it doesn't feel that good. At least I've played against it, and I've never had an issue playing against Terapagos in, you know, the testing so far. So I don't think Terapagos is going to be that great. Lunala, I think it's a C. There's some shenanigans you could do with it. I don't think it's going to be anything crazy. You get Shadow Shield, obviously. I think it's going to be a lot of the Meteor Beam, Power Herb stuff that we normally see out of this Pokemon. It's going to be that option for Trick Room. It's got access to Wide Guard, so it's got some fun tools. I just don't see it being that crazy. You got the Meteor Beam, and then you can do your whatever the signature move is called. I don't even remember. Moongeist Beam. I think this is going to be what you're typically going to see on this Pokemon. You get your Trick Room up, you start doing the shenanigans. I don't think it's going to be super crazy. I think Solgaleo is a little bit better. Not significantly better, though. I'm running out of spots to add Pokemon into my box, so we're going to have to start deleting stuff as we go. I don't think that Solgaleo is going to be significantly better. Again, prevents Pokemon from lowering this Pokemon's stat changes. It was really solid in Dynamax because you could Dynamax it with a weakness policy, and it was really good because, you know, you can't lower the stat changes. Really solid in that regard. However, doesn't feel as good now that we're not like self-rocking weakness policy. Trying to think. I mean, this could be solid with like Gouging Fire. I think that's where you're going to see a lot of this is like Howl Gouging Fire, because you can just go in with Howls and be able to get off. And now that I say this actually sounds a little bit better than I was anticipating. I'm glad I put it in B. But like Howl Gouging Fire could be pretty solid for Solgaleo and just start buffing up those Solgaleo without being able to be intimidated without the use of a Clear Amulet. I think that's really solid. So definitely something that I could see happen. Again, I don't think it's any higher than a B tier for this reason, but I definitely think that this is a decent strategy for this now that I'm thinking about it. Now, as far as Duskmane and Dawnwing go, I think that they will be placed similarly to their counterparts. I do think there is a touch more play for each of them because of the Prism Armor. I think that's really solid. Let me get the other one on here. I think there's a touch more play. You can go for the weakness policy stuff because you are taking that reduced damage. There is that opportunity. I don't think there'll be a ton of play for these. I could be wrong. I could be very wrong on these two particular Pokemon. There could be some niche tech for these two particular Pokemon, especially with that reduced damage that they're taking from super effective attacks. But I think they're placed similarly to their counterpart. I think they're going to be in their respective tiers. Maybe move this up into B tier, but not entirely sure. Then we get to the final two restricted Pokemon. We have Ice Rider. Ice Rider is going to be slept on, I think. I think a lot of people are going to opt for the Shadow Rider variant. I think Ice Rider is also incredibly solid right now, right? So let me clear out a couple more here. We go for the Ice Rider. I think this is just so incredibly good, right? We get the As One ability, combination of Unnerve and Chilling Day. So when you knock something out, you get the attack buff, plus you cannot eat berries while this Pokemon's on the field. Very good into playing in things like Incineroar, things of that nature. And now we get access to Clear Amulet. So the biggest thing that was holding this back in previous generations was Incineroar being able to intimidate it and just cycle that kind of stuff. You can avoid that entirely. So all the breaking swipe stuff that you're seeing, all of the intimidate that you're seeing has to go through a turn of knockoff before it can actually start working, which is a lot of time for this Pokemon to get rolling, right? Because you have Glacial Lance, 120 base power, 100% accurate ice type move that is going to hit adjacent foes and potentially take just big KOs and knock stuff out. I think your biggest friend on this Pokemon is going to be Indeedee. Indeedee is going to be fantastic. You can follow me away. You can run Trick Room on this. Kind of do the Hatterene Indeedee strategy where you follow me into Indeedee and go for just big Trick Room stuff over here. Or, you know, you can lead something else with Indeedee and Indeedee can set Trick Room. A lot of options with this setup. Same thing can be done with Farigiraf. Run these two next to each other. And Farigiraf can like Helping Hand. But that's the thing is Glacial Lance with Helping Hand is stupid. It's absolutely stupid how much damage that does. And if you look at this thing's defensive stats, it can eat hits. It just eats them. It doesn't care, right? Gives you a lot of playability with this particular Pokemon, and it's like the only restricted legend that actually feels like a Trick Room Pokemon. So hard Trick Room lovers out there, Calyrex-Ice Rider is your friend, and I think it is super good. I think it is excellent in the current format. And then the final one, Shadow Rider. Shadow Rider is another S tier, without a doubt in my mind. This thing is stupid strong. Look at these stats. This is ridiculously fast. Put this down to level 50, just so you guys have an idea here. With a timid nature, stupid fast. This thing is nuts. Especially if you run a Focus Sash on this thing. You run it next to Indeedee. That's going to be its bread and butter. It's going to be an expanding force, Astral Barrage, and it has the same effect. You combine Unnerved with Grimnay. It gives you the special attack boost if you knock out a Pokemon with this. Stupid strong. And this is going to be on your hyper offense teams for sure. It's kind of going to take Fluttermane's place on like those Tornadus, Chi-Yu, Bundle, kind of hyper offensive teams. This basically just takes Fluttermane's place, and you throw Indeedee on there as well, and this thing just starts eating, right? So yeah, it's going to be very nice next to those Indeedee, because you can set the Psychic Surge, you can start expanding forcing. This thing is not invincible. Despite it being an S tier, I think it's incredibly good, but I think a lot of people are like, oh, this thing is very difficult. A lot of Pokemon handle this very effectively. In my testing, it's not that hard to get around this Pokemon. It is insane if you let it start rolling, but it is not that difficult to get around. So for me personally, I think it's extremely good. I think it's an S tier Pokemon, but much like Fluttermane in the sense of being an S tier Pokemon, it dies quick. So if you can get a hold of this Pokemon and like get set up, like it's very easy to deal with. Choice Scarf is also a really solid option for this before I close out on this particular Pokemon. You're gonna see a lot of this. You're gonna see a lot of these three, and you're gonna see a lot of Groudon. And yeah, I think that's the big one. I think a lot of people are going to run Zacian mainly because of the fact that, you know, it was so popular. You're going to see a lot of that pop up. But I think the main four that you're going to see are Miraidon, Calyrex, Ice, and Shadow Rider, and Groudon. Those are going to be the restricted Pokemon in this format. That's just my opinion. There is the completed list. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below, because, you know, this is definitely up for debate. And this is definitely likely going to change as people start testing more, but this is like day 2 of the format, and these are my thoughts after some testing yesterday. So let me know your thoughts in the comments below. I think this is a really fun format so far. I always love the start of a new format. Sub if you're not already. Check out the Discord. Be sure to share teams over there if you want to feature in future videos, and I'll see you on the next one. Peace.